Well, hello, everybody. We are live and on the air here, broadcasting. And as our panelists, I hope, get to me and come online, we're going to talk with them. We're a little bit before the start point, so I just want to hang for a little bit, no pun intended, until we can get some of our passing bar review students from some prior exams to come along. And I want to try and get everybody on here, but I'm not seeing all of them. They say they're on, but where are they? No, you're not on the... Hey, Wayne, if you're watching and you can see this, you're not actually on it. You have to sign into the Hangout itself. You can't just be watching. So you need to actually come in to the Hangout to be on the panel here. So hopefully you're going to figure that out. For those of you that are going to be panelists, I don't want you just watching. I need you to actually participate in the Hangout, not just going to watch. So you don't want to just watch. You want to come on and actually participate. You need to be in the Hangout itself. So let's see here. If we can get some of you on. Okay, if you're watching and you're going to be a panelist, I need you to actually get into the Hangout itself rather than just watching it. So you need to actually sign in and go beyond just being a watcher. And hopefully we can do that. This is Jackson. Hey. Yeah. Okay. Hey, Mario, I'm about to start a Google Hangout on live on the air. So could I give you a call back in about an hour? Okay. Okay, great. Thanks very much. Well, I can tell we've got some of our panelists out there, but what looks like is happening, if you're watching and you're going to participate with me as a panelist, you got to move out of the watching mode into the participating mode from the site. You actually have to sign in to participate in the Hangout itself. And if you're having trouble doing that, shoot me a comment and let me see if we can figure out what the problem is and why you're not able to get on. For those of you that are just coming online to watch, hi everybody. My name is Jackson Mummy, and I own Celebration Bar Review. And today, if we can figure out the tech, we're going to try and get some of our former students on to share some of their thoughts and ideas about how the bar exam went and their experience and what worked and didn't work for them. And we want to be able to have you hear what they have to say. The great challenge I'm facing right at this moment is that I can see that a number of those panelists are around and they don't seem to be able to get into the Hangout yet. So I'm going to try and get them online. While we're doing that, I'm just going to make some comments generally about some things that are going on. This has been a busy day, a busy weekend with the bar exam. A couple of big things happened that affect a lot of people. One of them, obviously, is the change coming in New York in July of 2016, in which the exam is shifting from the existing test, New York specific and multi-state, to something called the Uniform Bar Exam, which is a more generic test, not New York specific, made up of essay questions and the multi-state performance test on day one, and then the multi-state bar exam as it's been in day two. That's a pretty big shift. I've written a couple of blog posts already about it, and I may be the lone guy out here saying that this is, in my view, kind of an emperor has no clothes, three-card Monte kind of deal. My basic concern is this. It's being touted as a way to make a bar license more potable, but the problem is that even though it's more portable, it's only portable out of New York. It's not portable into New York. The Uniform Bar Exam is going to be, or is currently available in 14 jurisdictions, most of which are very small jurisdictions, places like Minnesota, North Dakota, Wyoming. And the interesting part about all of this is that the rules about the Uniform Bar Exam are not as clear-cut as they're being held out to the public to be. That is, you can't just take the bar exam, the UBE, in Wyoming and pass in Wyoming and then show up at the doorstep of the New York bar and say, hi, here I am, admit me. It isn't going to happen that way. You'll still have to take the bar exam in New York. That's what's not being said. The other thing that's not being said is that, let's say you take the bar exam in New York and now you want to go practice in Wyoming. Why, I'm not sure, but let's assume that. You don't necessarily get to take your entire bar score from New York to Wyoming. You may be able to take the multi-state bar exam part of the score, but not the entire score. I mean, it's different in every jurisdiction, and these rules are changing all the time. And so for those people who think that this is making the exam more portable or the license more portable, the quick answer is not so fast. Probably not. Probably not really going to change a whole lot, except that the New York bar will probably become easier to take based on my experience in teaching both New York and the Uniform Bar Exam for a number of years. I think the UBE is an easier test. It's got fewer subjects. It's obviously not New York specific with subjects like CPLR and some other things. So if you are a New York bar taker, I would just say that one of the things that you want to really kind of be watching for is that you don't get caught up in this hype that you can go somewhere else, take an easy test, and wave into New York. That isn't going to happen for sure. If you do want to take the new form of the New York exam, that will be starting in July of 2016. You can start your studies for that with us right away. It's exactly the same course that we teach in a number of other jurisdictions. And it is easier because there are fewer subjects and there's less state specific. The New York multiple choice is gone. The sort of floating time frames change for the essays. It's very rigid 30-minute essays, much more focused. So that's part of it as well. Want to make sure that you all can hear me. I'm getting some notes that, I can see that some of you are out there. If you can hear me, and you can shoot me a note that says you can hear me or you can't, that would be great. But in any event, I wanted to make sure that you all had that information about New York. The other big topic, obviously, as we start talking today, is the California bar results came out last night. California remains the hardest bar exam in the country based on overall pass rates. I don't have the pass rates, the official rates yet. Those will be released tomorrow night. or sometime later today. Historically, the results are usually in the 35 to 40% pass range, much like New York's overall pass rate. California is a really tough jurisdiction, and if you're a repeat bar taker, it's a brutally tough jurisdiction. I mean, we're looking at 10 to 15% pass rate for repeat bar takers in California. Really excited that right now we are running, as of last night and early this morning, about a 75% pass rate for our students in California. I think that's going to far exceed the overall state average for all bar takers, and that includes some repeat bar takers. So pretty exciting, good news, great stuff that's happening. We've started to post some of the comments from those students on our Facebook page, on Twitter, and on our website under the testimonials page. So, the test in California, the other sort of newsy piece of all this is that one of the law school deans in California, Erwin Chemerinsky, who ironically is a former college debater that I debated against back in the dark ages. Erwin's an incredible guy, brilliant, great law school dean. He came out and said, well, what really needs to happen now that New York switched to the UBE is that California needs to switch to the UBE. I guess I would say this: if they do, that's great. Again, I think it makes for an easier test. I wouldn't hold my breath for that to happen. Jurisdictions like California, Florida, Texas don't seem to be in any hurry at all to switch what they're doing, in spite of what the chief judge in New York says about New York being the epicenter of the legal world. I think more to the point, what Dean Chemerinsky and other deans in California really are saying, if we kind of cut it back a little bit, is that they want a higher pass rate. They want an easier test. And the UBE may give them both of those things, but it is not going to change portability at all, not one iota. I think that the process to move the machinery in California is going to take a long time if it happens at all. So if you're planning on waiting to see if you could get into California with the UBE, I would say if it's going to happen at all, we're still a couple years away from it. New York moved pretty quickly really for them, and we're still more than a year away from that test. So I don't see anything happening right away that's going to change it. And I think that the reality is that while the test in California is really difficult, not much is going to change with that, as long as there are supply and demand figures that we see for lawyers and legal jobs. And as long as that remains out of whack, the bar exam continues to be tough. One of the questions that people have asked me is the exam getting harder? The answer, in my experience, after 25 years of teaching the bar, is no, it's not. The exam itself is actually not any harder. What's happened generally, and I don't agree with the bar examiners who say students are getting stupider, really it's something entirely different. The exam isn't harder, but the grading is much more difficult. And the grading is being done in large part in a number of these major jurisdictions by non-professionals, non-experts in the bar. For example, in California, if you've taken and passed the bar on first or second try, regardless of whether you're practicing, regardless of how long you've been practicing, regardless of your teaching or writing skills, regardless of any of those things, you can sign up to be a bar grader. You'll get paid $3.10 an hour, or $3.10 per book, I'm sorry, that you read per answer. And a typical bar grader makes about $1,000 in a bar exam cycle. So when somebody tells you, and they trumpet their credentials as being a bar grader, I would be pretty skeptical that that means anything to you. It's a bit like saying, yeah, and I was a barista, it's so what? The reality is that this group of bar graders, unlike the old days when we had professors and professionals and partners in law firms and judges and people who spent their entire career doing bar, these days we don't get that. And the net result of that is that we end up with grading that's really pretty perfunctory. It's done quickly. It's not done with a lot of care. There's not a lot of incentive. I mean, it's really a backwards incentivized system. Many of the people doing this bar grading are unemployed members of the bar. And we're asking them, hey, give good grades to people so you can have more competition for more jobs. I mean, that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But that's the circumstance in a lot of major jurisdictions. And the net result of that is that the grading is harder, not the test itself. very little change in the test. If you actually look at the multi-state, for example, even though they added a seventh subject, which was federal civil procedure, and I'll talk about that more in a moment, that the reality is the test numbers didn't change much there on the objective part of the test. What's changing is that people are getting generally lower scores. For example, in California, where typically we would have seen an essay and maybe we would have said, well, that's a 60 or a 65 score out of 100. Today, that same essay would be getting a 55 or a 60. We see that all over the country. See that in New York, see it in Florida. It's a constant pattern. And what that tells me isn't that the questions are harder. I could actually lay out 10 questions for you from different exam dates, and it would be impossible for you to say which one came from which date, or a certain group of them were more recent and therefore tougher. Almost impossible to tell that. But the grading is tougher. So I guess that's really my point, is the students aren't stupider in my experience. The exam isn't tougher, but the grading is much tougher. And so that's a real challenge, I think, for people who are studying and trying to get ready and taking the bar and working through it. So those are a couple of things. One other thing, obviously, I do want to talk about is the addition of federal civil procedure and federal jurisdiction. This was something that caused, obviously, a great deal of anxiety going into the very exams. Here's something that's really interesting to us. I mean, we're still waiting to get, obviously, the detail scores out of California, and the only other jurisdiction we're missing right now is Georgia. But across all the other jurisdictions, which means big ones like Florida, New York, New Jersey, Texas, we're seeing a really interesting correlation. It's this. Basically, the MBE scores didn't change much. We give a practice test, several practice tests, but one of the ones that we've always given is the February 1991 MBE, which was 6 subjects, and it was even in a different configuration. It wasn't evenly split among the 6 subjects back then. And the reason we use that test is that it has remarkably been an incredibly accurate bellwether of how people are going to do on the actual bar exam. When taken under test conditions, the scores on that February 1991 test consistently matched within 5 scale points up or down of the actual bar score. And years ago, the national conference wanted to get rid of that test, and we presented our data to them and showed them how accurate it was, and they said, well, okay, you can keep it. Well, we gave that test again before the February exam, and I said to my students, I don't know if this is going to be accurate now, given federal civil procedure. It's a good practice test, but I don't know if it's predictive. Well, here's the weird thing. It's absolutely every bit as predictive as it was before. I can't explain that to you except to say that I don't think adding this 7th subject at the end of the day made much of an overall difference. While it added a new subject, it wasn't a very tough subject, I think, for a lot of people, because it was rule-based and it was statutory, and I think that helped. But the second thing was that it took away questions that may have been difficult for people. In other words, if you're like me and you're property phobic, having 6 fewer property questions replaced by 6 federal civil procedure or jurisdiction questions, I'll make that trade all day long. That was a very easy one for me to be able to work through. So I think that's what we're seeing. We're not getting any wild deviations. I mean, I expected we might see some pretty big swings between practice scores and real scores on the MBE, but on the real scores that have come in against the students who reported their practice scores to us, they're like right on. They're nearly identical. So who knew? But I guess if you're looking at taking the exam coming forward, I don't think I would be afraid of this new subject. It's certainly something in our course we've got covered. I didn't get much in the way of feedback of people saying I didn't feel like I knew, anything that said, anyone that said, I didn't feel ready for civil procedure. I think everyone did, and it seemed to not be a major problem. So those are some of the good things that I see happening, and some things that certainly we're excited about. I am still trying desperately here as I'm talking to get some of my participants online with me, and I cannot figure out, to be honest, I don't know why they're not coming on. I'm not sure what's going on here. I know some of you are watching, and I can't quite tell you why you're not getting in. If you'll hold on here, I'm just looking here and getting some information. Maybe I can figure this out. Okay, I'm going to try here. If you are one of the panelists, I'm going to ask you to do something. Send me your Gmail address. Apparently, I need that to invite you into the Hangout. So if you would bear with me for a minute while we do that, I want to try and invite some of you into the Hangout here and see if we can make that happen. I don't know if we're going to be able to pull this off. Okay, let's see here. Well, I hate to say this, guys, but I don't think I can get these panelists on here today. And I hate to do that to you, and I hate to waste anybody's time. We're just having a technical problem. There's obviously something that I don't understand about this process. So what I'm going to have to do, I'm afraid, is stop this call. We'll reschedule it. I'll figure out how to get people into the Hangout so that next time we know they're going to be here. I think that's about all I can offer you for right now. And my apologies to you. We'll try and get it figured out and get it worked out for next time. So I'm going to stop the broadcast and we'll try and reschedule for perhaps next week and get these folks in. But thanks for coming online today, and we'll get to you. Thanks.